Hi, my name is Rick Sharp, and my topic is the ethical and legal implications of treating full-time employees as independent contractors and the ramifications thereof. Now, this topic seems pretty basic, but there's many layers to it, and the layers are both in the ethical implications and the legal implications. And first of all, let's do a brief overview. This situation arises where you have two groups of employees, or maybe just one group, that should be treated as employees, but you treat as independent contractors as an employer. Now, what we're looking for is full-time, working for tasks set by the manager and employer. Employer controls the way those tasks are to be accomplished. Employer controls handing out those tasks and the time frame under which it's accomplished. Now, an independent contractor, on the other hand, would be assigned a job. It would be their job to figure out how to get it done, their time frame, who they're going to employ to get it done, the means, methods of getting it done, and thus they'd only be responsible for the final product, not how it got accomplished. Now, the most common area for this treatment is in tax treatment, and many times employers looking to save some money will treat those who would normally be employees as independent contractors. And sometimes the first time the employee finds out, if they're not very vigilant, is when they receive a 1099 at tax time. They go to do their taxes expecting a refund, and instead they have to pay employment tax, self-employment tax, which not only eats up their refund but ends in a substantial liability for the taxpayer. And how this works is, under the Internal Revenue Code, the employer is responsible for paying the withholdings, the employer side of the withholdings, the employer side of FICA and FUTA, and also withholding taxes, FICA and FUTA for the employee. What happens is in the independent contractor situation is the employer just pays the amount or compensation to the contractor and is not required to have any withholding, not required to pay the contractor in compliance with minimum wage standards, and is also not liable for the acts of the contractor. And this is important because many times employers think that it's more beneficial to their business to only hire, or rather contract with individuals as independent contractors to save the expense of taxes and the exposure to liability based on the business they're in and the actions performed. Now, employees treated as independent contractors can address the situation at tax time by filing Form SS-8 with the IRS, which basically says to the IRS, I've satisfied the conditions of being in an employer-employee relationship. However, the employer has treated me as a contractor. They have substantial control over the methods, means, and how, when, why, and where I accomplish the task and finish the job. And as such, I should not be liable for the employer's portion of the self-employment tax, or of the tax on my wages. And in recent years, since about 1995, the IRS has aggressively been attacking the position by employers that people who normally should be treated as employees are independent contractors. And through my interview with Mr. Fred Kobler of United Tax Service, he relayed to me the fact that of the 1,000 returns he prepares every year, about 40 to 50 he gets in this SS-8 situation, where they're, and it's from all different groups, from construction to churches to everyone's mistreating their employees. And what happens is people are apprehensive to file Form SS-8 because the IRS will notify the employer and attempt to collect the tax from the employer, and oftentimes this can lead to retaliation or in other circumstances, as he related in one circumstance where the employer actually showed up at the place of the contractor's residence and wanted to start a physical altercation. Now, this may be the exception, but it does speak to why there would be a reluctance to file the form. And in many cases, people just pay the tax, even though they can't afford it. They somehow come up with the money, or would rather be in debt to the in debt to the IRS than to have to face losing their job or the ramifications of dealing with an angry employer. Now, other areas where this is important is in both federal and state law, and in state actions that apply mostly to workers' comp and unemployment, where employers are not liable to pay in for the workers' comp or unemployment for their contractors, whereby they would be liable if they were employees. And this can also be a substantial savings on the part of the employer, not necessarily ethical or legal, but the incentive to save money in this economy is certainly there. And as such, employers looking for every edge will take advantage of this. And what will happen, though, is they'll put the burden on the contractor, who should be an employee, either to sue the independent third party who caused the injury under workers' comp, or to try and sue the employer to establish an employee relationship for workers' comp collection, which can be difficult, time-consuming, and really delay the process of becoming whole after injury. And the other aspect is for unemployment. If you terminate the contract relationship, the person can no longer collect, or is not entitled to collect, unemployment benefits, which can be severely detrimental in this economy to many people who should be classified as workers. Now, under Michigan law, it's well settled that employers are vicariously liable for the actions of their employees during the scope of employment. However, they are expressly not liable for acts of independent contractors. Thus, employers seek escaping exposure to liability by classifying workers as independent contractors and 1099ing them. Now, in other areas where we see this is under FMLA, ERISA, Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which prohibits discrimination based on gender, age, and race. And why this is important is it sets up an ethical consideration where two groups of employees are treated differently. One are treated as contractors, the other as employees. Employees can sue if they're terminated or discriminated based on race or sex or age or gender. However, the contractors cannot. And when you treat two groups differently, you get a lot of division and can often lead to problems in the workplace. And it's not usually in many codes of conduct or codes of ethics within corporate America where it says, well, this group can do this, however, this group is not entitled to these benefits and will be treated as second-class citizens. Usually that's not a recipe for success, and usually that will lead to Wild Wild West mentality, as was seen with Enron and WorldCom, where there was a group that thought these rules apply to us, no one else, and as such we're going to allocate money the way and account for it the way we want to, while leaving the shareholders and employees holding the bag as they lost their jobs and lost their money. Same can be said in the more generalized sector, where if you treat two groups differently, not only do you leave yourself up to exposure if a group can prove that they should be entitled to benefits, but you also leave the situation where people won't want to do business with you because they'll think you're dishonest, lack integrity, and generally can't be trusted. Now, in conclusion, although this is often illegal and certainly outside the ethical codes of conduct, it must be addressed, because in this economy the incentives all point to taking advantage of persons that should be classified as employees, and as such there needs to be a setup, either harsher penalties, inclusion of independent contractors into being able to sue under both federal and state statutes to collect, or some framework to entitle independent contractors to receive treatment as employees when they substantially, and in many cases, acts or perform tasks substantially similar to those of employees in full-time employment. Thank you very much. I'm open to take any questions online. Thank you again.